So we have seen so far that when I add an item, so let's say blah, 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 and if I hit the enter button, right? If I hit enter, this entire application seems to be refreshed, all right? Just to prove the point, I'm going to come over here, go to the settings and say preserve log, all right? So what preserve log does is when you're navigating from page to page, it actually keeps the logs from the previous session. That's all it does, right? So we can see what's happening. So now I'm going to enter some information. Now if I'm going to hit enter, you see the log says navigated to this particular file, index.html, and the question mark. This is basically this particular file. I'm not going away anywhere else, but what the point I want to make is that when you hit enter on a form, because you see over here, this is a form, it actually will try to go to a particular URL that you provide to the form. So usually the way forms work is that you will have a property called an attribute called action, and you would say some kind of URL, right? So usually in the web world, what happens is, let's say if you have a login button or login feature, a sign up feature, when you enter your information and you hit submit, this information is actually sent out to the backend. And in the forms, you actually write the location of that backend. So let's say api.server.ilovecoding.org, API server, whatever, right? And some login information or data information, whatever. It doesn't matter what the URL is, but it's going to basically try to go to that URL and send that information to that API. So that's the reason why we have forms, because forms usually capture some information and send it to the backend, right? Now, in our example, we are not doing that, right? We are simply not doing any sending of the data somewhere else. So in that case, the form is stupid. It just refreshes the browser, right? It just says, okay, I don't know where to go, so I'm going to just refresh and recall myself. So when it does, our application loses all the information. So that's what's happening. So what we need to do is we need to prevent this behavior, prevent the behavior. So to do that, we first of all have to convert this particular button to the submit. All right. So what happens over here, actually, I missed one particular point. So when you actually hit enter, what happens is that this form is attempted to be submitted. That's what is happening. All right. So what we want to do is convert this particular input field to the submit button. So when I hit enter or when I hit click, in both cases, this submission is going to happen. So previously, when this was a button, this was acting independent of the form. Okay? This was acting independent of the form. So the input element, which is of course inside form, was not acting as if it was submitting a form. It was just acting like a button. Do whatever with it, right? But once you change this property to submit, then whenever you use this particular button or hit enter, the form is submitted. So when I click or I hit enter, in both cases, this particular event triggers and the form is submitted. So it's no longer a click event, it's a submit event because it's submitting the form. So what this helps us with is that we just change this property, that's all. And instead of making our activity work on the click event, we're doing click over here, right? We instead are going to capture the submit event. I know I'm giving you a lot of information, so that's why I'm pausing over here. So the submit event is always attached to the form because only forms are submitted. Buttons are not submitted. So instead of now capturing the add button dot add event listener, I will actually do the form dot add event listener. So I need to capture the form, so I'm going to do that. I know I'm giving you a lot of information, so watch this video again if you're not capturing this, because there's a lot of background information about forms over here. And we're going to capture the form. Where's the form? And the class is add. And we can just simply call form.add. So grab the element form with the class of add. Okay, so that will capture that. And instead of adding the event listener to the button, because we don't no longer want that, we want to attach the event listener to the form. So form is when submitted, then run this. We want that activity. So now when I hit enter or when I click the button, both will actually trigger the submit event. Both will do the same thing.